Hello and welcome to Education in Focus, where today we are lucky enough to have our first guest, Mandy. Mandy is a primary school teacher and a doctor who caught up with our education expert, Jason, to talk about teens and common issues they come across at senior school.
Well, I'd like to welcome my friend Mandy to this podcast. It's great to see you here, Mandy. And I must say, for the benefit of the listeners, that you are obviously, apart from me, a friend of mine. You're an adopted parent of two wonderful children. And we used to work together at school, didn't we? How many
We
years was
did.
it we did?
7,
Yeah.
I think.
Sure,
Yeah,
it flew by in a flash. It was such joy.
it did.
So, yeah, and I'm really delighted that you've agreed to come and talk to us, because what we're talking about today is a really big theme, I'd say, and for a lot of adopted parents, it's going to be a challenging time for everyone. In fact, for parents who have children who their birth children, it's difficult, isn't it? The teenage years. So hopefully we'll be able to have some discussions around some of the themes around parenting teenagers, and also with the focus on obviously supporting them through education, because you obviously have that benefit of being a teacher yourself and knowing what it's like from one side of the fence. I suppose part of this is to think about how we best advocate the children and support them and things to look out for. So,
Yeah.
but perhaps we should start by, if you want to give us a little bit of a background to your two and how you began the journey.
How we began our journey. Well, our journey it began about 10 years ago, and we adopted our two 9 years ago. They've been with us now, so it's quite a long time. And but they were in foster care for quite a while. The youngest came to us. They are natural siblings. And the youngest came to us at 2, and our daughter, the eldest, she came to us. She was 5 at the time, but they'd actually left birth parents at 10 months and 3, so they had been in the foster care network for 2 years, and some of that was very successful and some of that wasn't quite so successful.
Yeah.
So I think the main misconception that people have is, the youngest left at 10 months, so he has seen very little, but actually in some ways his experience is so vastly different. We still see all the trauma, and we have a stronger reaction often to a lot of things from him.
Okay.
So I think it's a major misconception that people feel that the earlier they are removed, the easier it is. So then they've been with us for obviously 9 years now, and we have worked through. We were very trained with therapeutic parenting. And we've worked through a lot of issues with therapeutic parenting, to the point when my daughter was about 7, she said to me, "Mummy, do we have to talk about this again?" and
So they become aware that you're using these strategies.
Yes,
Oh,
she was
blow my cover.
therapeutic to death. But so we went through a lot of the triggers, and we've come out the other side to some extent. And there's a point where you're kind of congratulating yourself that you've gone so far, and you're thinking, they feel secure and they feel happy, and aren't they doing well? And then adolescence and all that hits, and it is a little bit of for us, it's been a bit of a bolt from the blue, that even though our social worker told us it would happen, you really kind of don't believe it will.
Yeah. What did they say would happen?
She said that our social worker was amazing, absolutely fantastic. And she said to us, watch out for when they're between 11 and 13. She said they go back to their life story. She says everything comes back again. And she said, and you'll be reliving things you feel you've done. And we thought, at the time we took her very seriously, but after you've done 9 years and they seem very settled and very securely bonded, and you've got over most of the major triggers and school is probably as settled as it's going to be, you think you kind of done a lot
I
of
think
it.
you're thinking, right, we're getting the rewards now of all this work we've put in, all this time we've invested.
Yeah, you feel like you've like, whew, there's a point where you both sit down on the sofa and you think, oh, maybe we've got this. No,
Let's not put anyone off.
that's how we felt. We honestly felt like,
Oh,
okay,
dear.
no, not quite so much.
Okay, so what have you noticed then has happened? Is it exactly as she warned you would be?
It's been harder than she's said.
Really?
It's
Oh,
not
gosh.
just the life story work, because I think when our daughter started secondary, I thought, right, okay, let's go back to she kind of was a little bit more interested in where did I come from, and we've always been incredibly open with them. The life story books are out all the time, and they go through a phase of they're just not interested anymore.
Yeah.
And but no, we got them out again, we talked it all through again, and they questioned decisions, but why did we leave, why? And she remembers a lot of it, so she'd gone through the denial, everything was Disney princess, it wasn't like that. She's gone right through that. She knew, she remembered, she would talk over the issues, but she wanted to know the reasons why, which of course we don't know. So we could only conjecture on what the reasons why things happen the way they happen. And again, we thought, aren't we doing well? They've been very open with this, and it's going okay so far. And
I suppose it's a good sign, isn't it? If they're prepared to ask these questions, and I suppose that as an age of development, they begin to want to know a little bit more because they're ready for that. But
yeah, and I think for her, she's always been much more open and talking about her feelings than our youngest. She wasn't to start with, but obviously I talked her to death, bless her. And she's kind of got into that habit. She'll come and sit down and, Mummy, let's talk. But then she kind of became, it was year 8, she became very secretive. And I think the time that I thought something was really going to go awry was she started coming home going, I don't want to be the good girl anymore. I'm fed up of always doing everything right. And because of her background, she was a people pleaser before. She always wanted to please, and we thought we'd kind of mellowed that out a bit. She felt more secure, but obviously there was a big part of her that felt that she was still people pleasing. Yeah. And now looking back, we're really glad, because she's now year 9, we're really glad that she did that, and she felt that she didn't have to be good all the time. We were well versed with detentions every night of the week.
That's an incredible self-awareness, though, isn't it, from her to actually realise that that's what she has been doing, in a sense.
Well, at the time, it was horrific.
I know it sounds lovely when you say it now, but obviously it does belie a real self-awareness.
I mean, and you know her, she doesn't seem to be that kind of in detention all the time.
No, not at all.
So it's not something you would kind of expect necessarily, but I can see where it came from. She was normally very a sunny, cheery, very loving girl. Well, she had become a very much more trusting than she ever was, and it kind of flipped us all the way back to the not trusting. She was very secretive for a while, and then we found out she was on the internet secretly making accounts on different platforms that we didn't know about, and luckily we found it.
Gosh, that must have been a bit of a shock.
Yeah, it was so difficult, and I think because she's a girl, my husband found it really difficult, and he said, you're going to have to deal with this, I've got to leave the house. He was so cross and upset and could not deal.
Yeah.
And we initially, all your therapeutic parenting goes out the window for a little while, and then you're aware you can't be cross. You must explain why. And the thing, I think the trouble was, it wasn't just once. It happened again, and then it happened again, and it happened 4 times that we found. But each time was a little bit less and a little bit easier, and she became a bit more open, and she explained why. And so I think through those times we built that understanding of, we're not trying to keep her away, we're trying to protect her and make sure she's doing it right.
Yeah.
So, and she did take on board the things, that the slightly risque photos came down.
Yeah.
That she wasn't aware of their impact. They came down. She hasn't done that. She has been more aware of what she's doing, and we've been able to now allow her on those platforms that she was interested in a different way, and in a much more protected way. And she comes now and she'll show us what she's doing, and I follow her, and she talks about what's going on. And
wow, that's
so we've kind of...
That's huge, though. I mean, to still have that trust, because I can see how easy it would have been to become angry and just want to switch everything off, remove devices and so on. But
we did, and I think it did her a lot of good. So there was it was just at the end of her school year. It was just at the end of... No, it must have been just at the end of her sort of a school holiday, like Easter or something. We took it off her for the whole holiday. She was like, well, how am I going to see my friends? I keep in touch with my friends. And we were like, it's going. Doesn't matter, it's going. And we took her phone off her as well. And that was quite hard, because we've always been very, we want to know where she is and ring her on the way home. But actually, she admitted afterwards, her phone was taken off her. I inadvertently then hid it in the house and lost it. So it was really bad. So she was without her phone and off the internet for a long while. And actually, she said to me, she returned the child, the less moody teenager, the child who talked to us, the sunshine. She returned. And so I said to her, well, actually, has this break from the internet done you any harm? And she said it had. She said she actually appreciated it.
Gosh. Well.
So inadvertently, we didn't mean to do that.
No.
It was inadvertently, but inadvertently giving her that gap from social media allowed her to, I think, probably make friends in real life better.
Yeah. Well, internet's clearly a massive issue, isn't it, for parenting teens?
And we've had problems with the youngest as well on the... It's massive. It's. I think when we were young, it was easy. It wasn't there.
I know. Friends were just the people you went to see.
It wasn't there to this extent it is.
You just ring them up if you were going to, knock on the door and have them come out to play. And that was about it.
Yeah. And now and you just don't know what they're doing. And however many controls that you put in, at the end of the day, you have to build a trust. And that's the hardest thing when they've been doing it behind your back, to try and build a trust so that they can feel like they can come to you and say, I've been doing this and this has happened and so-and-so's put this.
Absolutely. I mean, so for a parent listening to this who's probably experiencing or maybe about to experience something similar, is that what you would advise? Say, try and keep the trust despite the fact you might be feeling really angry and want to...
Yeah, I think it's about building that trust back up again. And I wouldn't feel bad about giving them a break.
No,
because it really did work for us. It wasn't what we'd necessarily planned, but it worked for her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Try and maintain building that trust back up, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing you've got. If they want to do it, they can.
So ultimately, if they want to explore the world online and platforms, they're going to do it, aren't they? And I suppose you'd rather do it with at least some hand holding and a bit of guidance and helping them through that
Yeah.
in as safe way as you can.
If they don't do it with you, they'll do it behind your back. They'll get a phone from somewhere. I mean, I think she started by finding one of our old phones in the house and connecting it to the internet. And she's never been remotely computer savvy, but they know. They find out. They'll find out from their friends. So I think the feeling that you could stop it or deny it, it's not going to work. You can't do it.
Oh, okay. And so I suppose that moves us on to another topic, which is just it kind of brings on to friendships and things, because I think that I imagine, again, it's difficult enough even in the latter years of primary school, isn't it? Friendship issues become, particularly for girls, even from my own experience in school, when there were fallouts, it was so often those older children would have long fallouts that would last for weeks and weeks sometimes, and parents would bring me up, and then there'd be, they'd all get involved, and it would be this huge issue. So as they get older, I think friendships become such a massive part, and I wonder to what extent the friendships and peer pressure was.
It was a huge part of her journey. I think she. The trouble is, I think they're going through such a difficult time. All her hormones are racing, and she was very much wanting to rebel against her previous "I've always been good," and
Yeah,
the school at that point didn't notice how hard it was for her and how dysregulated she would become.
mm.
And even though I kept trying to say to them, and it's difficult at secondary, it's different at secondary. I think at primary it's much easier to get in touch with teachers. It's much easier to get to speak to them. And in secondary, it's not. And they obviously maybe don't see all the teachers that the child is with, and it has been a bit of a battle, and she was becoming very, very dysregulated at school. She hated going. And this kind of pushed her towards the wrong set of friends.
Right.
This feeling of I don't care, which they do. Our children, I find some of them tend to shut down, and it's, well, therefore then I don't care about anything.
It's that working model inside themselves, isn't it? That they view
Yeah,
themselves.
it's rejection. It's like, you're not going to reject me, I'll reject you
Yeah.
first. So she didn't care about school. She moved towards these other group of children that possibly, well, definitely, they weren't bringing out the best in her. They weren't bad children. They were nice in themselves, but they weren't very well regulated, and it didn't help her at all.
Oh dear. Has she moved away from them at all, or she sort of?
She is doing now, yeah.
Right.
It was very interesting. Eventually, she made up her mind. My husband's first thought was, right, that's it. She's not seeing them anymore. It was a knee-jerk reaction, and it was really hard for us, because you want to say no. We know they're bad. They're having a bad effect on you, but I know she would have gone the other way. She'd have said, as much as we say no, then she'll, worse. And, bear in mind that these were the children. She was getting into detention every night. She was in isolation. She was just like a completely different child that we just didn't recognise this child at
It must
the
be
school.
so worrying though, because you thought, what's happened to our girl?
Yeah.
Is this going to be forever? Is this that?
Yeah.
Is this everything now? Is this our
And
future?
you think, oh, where have we gone wrong? What did you do start it did put a pressure on our relationship, I think, as well, because you do start to second guess yourself and think, we must have done something wrong, and look at the way you both parent through a microscope, and actually it was more how she was feeling, I think. And I don't think I'm at the end yet, but she has decided to move away from those children. She made her own mind up at the end.
And ultimately, isn't that going to be a stronger decision? Yeah. Because I know it's this thing you just desperately want to tell them, because you know what's going. You can see it, that this is not right. It's not going to work. I wish I could sort of make you believe this and just put that information, but they just need to go through that process, and you've got to sit back and be there to catch them every time they fall, haven't you? You know what's going to
Yeah.
happen. I can see it's going to happen. We're just going to have to watch it and play it in front of me.
And of course, she's a girl. You do worry more about girls. I can't. You worry more because I don't know. The things can be more, more. It's different for girls and different for boys, and girls can be really nasty to each other at that age.
Yeah. I know.
But she's made a decision, and she's pushing through the other side. That the other children aren't necessarily that happy about it, and she's having some kickback.
Right.
But I'm really proud that she's sticking with it.
But
so.
is she able to reflect on what's happening and why it's happening, and the fact that these people are giving a kickback, and actually, is she recognizing that maybe they're not such good friends? Are they real friends? You know, is that kind of realization coming?
It's making her feel like she's made the right decision. So, you know, and that's good for her self-confidence and her self-esteem to think that she's made that right decision. And she said to me a little while ago, she said, Mum, she said, I think year 8 was for rebellion. She said, year 9 is for getting my head back down again. And I was like, okay, we can deal with that.
That's amazing.
You know, we can write off a year.
Yeah, well, you know, but it's not, I suppose she's learned something, hasn't she, in that time?
Yeah. I think she's learned quite a lot about other people and about herself. And she's learned that, I think it was important that she felt we went into school quite a few times for her. And I think that was important that she felt that we would fight for her.
Now, that's a really good point you make, because in other podcasts we've talked about, we've often said one of the key roles as parents, and particularly of adopted children, is being able to advocate for them, because they have different needs, and masking is such a big issue we've talked about as well. And we know that trying to get schools to recognise that there are things they need to do or be aware of is really hard. And so what's it been like for you?
Well, she had a few issues through primary school, but I was very careful to keep it away from her what we were doing. So she didn't know that we were going in and having meetings and making, you know, and asking for her particular issues to be dealt with in a different way.
Yeah.
And obviously she obviously didn't realize. I mean, we did try hard to make sure she didn't know it was going on, but I think because of that, there was that feeling that she didn't know that we fought for her once. And then when we went in again, I think that was a very powerful thing. And, you know, we did have to say to her, you've made some mistakes. You've not necessarily done it the way we would have hoped you have, but we love you, and there's no way that's changing, and we will fight for you. And I think because she had to sit in the meetings, they made her sit in the meetings. Gosh. So to start with, we were really not very happy about that. But actually, maybe it was a good thing, because she thought, well, they're sitting in there for me.
Yeah, I suppose they heard you say, hang on, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So how did you approach the school? I mean, what kind of things, or who did you speak to first of all? Because if you said it's hard to get hold of people, who did you?
Oh, it is very hard at secondary, because they're all on different timetables and they're all busy at different times of the day. And of course, you know, I'm teaching and they're teaching, and it's a bit ships in the night thing. I think to start with, we had a conversation with her head of year in year 8, and he battled all the way through year 8, bless him, with her. And to start with, it was he didn't really understand her at all.
Right.
And we had some meetings, we had lots of phone calls with him, and he did really, I think he really did get on board by the end of the year. She got on with him a lot better, and he's not her year tutor now, but she does seem to get on with him, so that's big.
Well, that's good. At least
he did try.
She made some progress, because I wasn't sure, you know, if they put the barriers up and said, "Oh, stop being, you know, Oh, it's that.
Well, to start with, there was a lot of that.
Pain.
There was a lot of, you see, secondary schools are so big. And I think what she struggled with, and some of her friends, and she knows other children in care or who adopted, and they've struggled with, is this feeling of there's rules for everybody, and they have to stick with the rules, and that doesn't always fit our children.
No.
And she became very dysregulated, and then there would be lessons that she would perhaps skip because she couldn't go in. She felt so panicky. And bless her, she didn't even leave school. She sat and waited outside the classrooms, but she wouldn't go in. And then they marked her as truant, gave her a detention for it. And
so no, not at all understanding.
No. And
Why?
It took a long while, and I think we're still going. I think it's certain schools, I think perhaps they find it harder than others, and I don't know. I'd say just keep fighting for your child, keep telling them, keep talking, and don't necessarily back down, because it does help your children to know that they're important to you.
That's a good point, isn't it? Because we often think, yes, practically just to try and make some changes and change some perceptions is powerful. But for your children to know that you're doing this on their behalf that's a really important part, isn't it?
Yeah, and I didn't realise that. I thought, she really oughtn't to know. Actually, she preferred to know. But maybe that's the age, she's older.
Yeah, I think it's crucial she got someone who's fighting on her behalf, and that must be really, really powerful for her. Are any highlights about secondary school? Can we find some positives amongst all of this difficulty?
She's been on a journey. She has been on such a journey, bless her. And I think she has learned a lot about making friends and what are the best friends to make. She has ended up leaning on us a lot more, and I think it strengthened our adoptive relationship, which is really good. And I don't think for 1 minute, and she's 14, I don't think for 1 minute we're out of the woods.
No.
But she's talking to us more. There's a little less secretiveness. Well, there's a lot less secretiveness.
Yeah,
actually.
and I suppose that's the thing, is that it's secretive because they're frightened of what the reaction might be. And it's the shame again, isn't it?
Yeah.
So much about shame that our children have to deal with. In a more general sense, I wanted to ask you a little bit about schools' behaviour policies and how effective or not they are, do you think? And have you had any success in trying to get them to modify, for example, detentions in those situations? Well, it's not appropriate because that reaction wasn't a chosen behaviour in a sense, was it? It's how she's felt. It's an emotional reaction to how the situation made her feel at the time.
Exactly. And in that situation, we found it hard because they were very much that we have to sanction, children can't miss lessons. We have to sanction. Where we have made much more positive was with, it got to the point where she was feeling so negative about school because it was detention after detention. It was, and then she felt like everything she did was being watched. And I don't want to pick out specifics because I don't want to feel like I'm damning a particular school or it's the way it is at that time for that child. But she felt she was raised above the parapet then, and then anything she did was wrong. And I think because our children are so sensitive to rejection, that's how they feel. So that we had her second, her year 9 lead, he'd perhaps caught up with the year 8 lead. He was a bit further along the line, I think they perhaps talked. And what did really help for her is we decided that I spoke to him about the negativity, it's constant punishment. And I think secondary can slide that way. it can feel to the children, and obviously our children, they don't deal with that. It can't be all negative all the time. So he flipped it. He said, right, we're going to draw a line in the sand. He did manage to cancel the odd detention. He was very good. And he talked to all her teachers about the positives, and he put her on what was called a positive report. And so the teachers had to tell her the positives of the lesson, every lesson. And in some ways she hated it. She really hated it.
Because a lot just don't like that either. They can't cope with the praise sometimes, can they?
But actually, once they diluted it a little bit and it had stopped being a report, but it carried on afterwards, that made a massive difference. She also sat in the background in parents' evening, because we had it online.
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't want them to know that she was there. Is she there? And we said no. And but she was listening in. And they said so many positive things about her, and that was really nice for her to hear, because she realised they weren't saying it for her. You know, they were. That was just the way they felt.
I guess it's another way of checking that it's true, isn't it? From her point of view, it's saying, I've heard this, but I want to hear it. Just make sure it actually is true. Because it's
that disbelief, that feeling they're really not good enough. And I think that's often really hard for schools to hone in on a group of children and think, well, how can they not think they're good enough? And but that really helped her for a while, to feel that actually they weren't against her. So I'd say that if your child is really feeling like they don't want to go to school, then can you persuade the school to switch out the dialogue to make it a more positive dialogue, so that they can say, well, yeah, but you know, you came and you tried really well and you participated, or you had your hand up, or you know, or you know, you put some great points across here, or your book's always very neat, or
anything just that's an achievement, because that child to walk in that room is enough for sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah,
that itself is a huge step.
Yeah, and that's how the point she was feeling. She felt that just getting to the room and sitting down, and then you know, she didn't want to be told, well, you're late, or your tie's not done straight, and your top button's not done up, or you haven't got your book out quick enough, or you know, she didn't want any of that. She needed to know that she was there and she participated.
Absolutely. That's amazing. It's interesting in this whole conversation about school, for example, we've not talked about outcomes, progress, academic outcomes, anything like that, because I'm guessing that the majority of the learning has not been related to it.
No.
The teaching and learning, has it? It's been around the emotional and social development.
Yeah, and while her year 8 was so dysregulated, she made very little progress. Although one thing we did find is that she made a lot of progress in one subject. She suddenly found a passion for one subject, and we were able to sort of find that way back in through that one subject. So that did help. But again, it was a bit of a fluke at one point. And they often don't, you know, they're not progressing. I mean, I've had a similar issue with my son. He's year 6, so he's just hitting the edge of those teen years. It doesn't just come at secondary, it kind of hits then. And he has massive anxiety, but he's so good at masking it, they all don't think he's got it. And the way that they conducted some things in year 6 made him hugely anxious, and basically just stopped him progressing. He'd had a fantastic year 5, and then just, you know, dead stop progression in year 6. And it was purely because of the way they did things differently.
Yeah.
And of course, then he comes home and acts out, and
yeah, it's the pop bottle that bursts over, isn't it? It's been contained. Masking is so hard, isn't it, for schools to notice?
Yeah, because some of them are he's incredibly good at it, And he's grown up like that. He just seems very confident, very self-assured, very socially able, and he is none of those things. And they just don't get it at all.
Has there been any discussions with the school around transition arrangements? Because are they just saying, oh, he'll be fine, he'll skip through it and there'll be no problem at all? Or do you think he needs, for example, do you think the school might benefit from giving him some extra sessions, extra visits and that sort of thing?
Yeah, they would. I think I've had so many battles with transition around him because he obviously found it so hard. He's found it hard all the way through primary, that I've kind of backed it up myself. So he does a lot of sports things at the secondary school. So, and because his elder sister was there, even though part of me would like him not to go there, all his friends are going there, he's going. Yeah. So I've kind of taken him to everything that I can go to that's hers, so that he can go up and see it and be there and feel an ownership about his football club's train up there. And so he's good. Better from that point of view. But yeah, he could do with extra. I think sometimes you have to take things into your own hands a little bit.
And I suppose from your point of view, the experience of being in a school, we know how transition arrangements can work, and we know how we can provide those extra things for some children that need it. So I suppose that experience, getting them onto site wherever you can, is a great idea, isn't it, for parents if they can?
I think it's just, it's important. If you've got an older sibling, it's easier. And I was lucky that my older daughter wasn't as, she was much able to sort of, because of her background, she didn't find transitions as bad. Yes, it would put in not a great coping mechanism, but she didn't become anxious in the same way that he did. So that if it's your first, the more that you can do up there, at the next school, the better. Just go for a look round with them. Go ask for a look round. We did that with our eldest and dragged along the youngest one. He was at that point only year 3, but we dragged him along as well. Yeah. Because I knew sooner or later he'd be there as well.
Yeah, so you're thinking ahead. Very good. Strategic thinking already.
It's a teacher thing, isn't it? That one? But again, if other parents get a chance to do it, the temptation is, they're still quite young, let's leave them behind, but take them.
Or let's not talk about secondary schools yet, it might upset them. But you may not be necessarily saying it because you're talking about them. If you have a sibling going out,
yeah, because he could go and look at it from his sister's perspective, and he didn't realise that he was also helping him. So he is a lot more confident about it now. But now we're at the point where he needs to go, but he'll be, I'm
fine. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? If the masking is still there. Another thought was about, we did a whole podcast to talk about homework, and I wasn't sure what your views on this were, because if you've got a lot of stuff going on, I'm sure homework's not at the top of the list.
No, I think it's doubly hard as a teacher as well, because you feel it from both sides.
Yeah.
Sometimes homework is very, very hard for them when, as I said, they're coming home, they're very dysregulated, they're really anti-school, and they don't want to do their homework, or worse, we went through a big phase with my daughter where she really didn't understand what it was. Right. And then you can message the teacher, but doesn't mean they'll respond. You can do your best at home to try and get them through it. It can then be, sometimes it can be very hit and miss, and their kickback response is detention.
Have you ever sort of stood up and said, look, I don't think it's appropriate to do this homework this week. We're not doing it. I'm telling the school they're not doing it, and they're not getting the detention. Have you you ever had to go to that stage?
Yeah, there was 1 week between they have their birthdays very close together and very close to Christmas, and it can be a difficult time with lots of emotions running high. And we had a couple of other things that happened to fall on that week, and they were actually doing well, but they were doing well in they were perhaps dysregulated in a very high way, but they were dealing with it quite well. They were quite positive. And I said, right, this week, you know what, we're not going to focus on the homework, because it's going to sort of almost kill the positives that they've got. And so, yeah, I had to ring in for her and say, no, she hasn't got it, and this is the reasons why she hadn't got it. And yeah, she got a detention, but I said she's not going. And yeah, she got another detention for not going, and I said she's still not going.
That's like punishing her for your decision, isn't it?
Yeah, and
gosh,
in the end, it kind of petered out. They didn't pursue it. It was only the once, and I did say to them, you know, we've supported all the other detentions that you've given her, even if we haven't agreed, but this one, you know, it was important for her not to do it this week, and it was a minor thing, you know, things like that she particularly has issues with. I will make an effort to say, right, you know, let's do it because it might help you get better. It's all, and we'll do it together. Often I'll just sit with her if she doesn't need any help, or if she does need help, then I'm there to help her if she does. But she hasn't got that feeling that she's sitting on her own doing her homework and everyone else is doing something more exciting. And the youngest as well, he tends to do his at the home at the weekend, much to his disgust. But he will eventually just sit down and get it done.
Yeah.
But again, this week it was a very busy week, but a very positive week in that they were dealing with everything really, really well, and that was more important.
Yeah, I suppose it's understanding what's important for your child at the time and biting that bullet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, as we've said in that podcast, you know, homework is not statutory. So the schools can try and enforce a punishment, but ultimately they can't do much else if you ultimately say it's not appropriate. And, you know, if you've got perfectly good reasons, we're not saying we should be undermining schools' behaviour policies, because that can be very dangerous too.
That's the difficulty, because they say, well, it's part of our policy and we can't allow you to not, you know, there has to be a sanction. And
well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Does there have to be a sanction?
Yeah, really difficult. And I don't want to be difficult on behalf of the children where I don't need to be. You know, we have tried really hard to follow them along, but we've also made sure that she knows that what we feel is important and what we don't feel is important. And I think that's, sometimes she will go to a half an hour detention even though none of us particularly agree with it, but because she knows we are on her side almost.
And that's important in itself, isn't it? Then it doesn't damage, there's no damage done, hopefully.
No, and we'll go pick her up and do something afterwards, and, you know, just so that she knows that we've ticked that box with the school, but we know that they don't really get it. But we'll get them. It's that case of, you know, she's trying to understand that Rome wasn't built in a day, but it's difficult for our children.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Oh gosh. It sounds like there's a huge amount of tightrope walking going on, really, isn't it? That's the
massive. I think you always feel like you're doing it wrong. I mean, I literally did go out and buy, you know, therapeutic parenting for teenagers books, because I did seek help. I joined groups, because you do feel like you could do something wrong. And I think if you've built a better relationship in the bit before, it's worth it, because that's what we have fallen back on. So all that work you did in the early years that feels a bit like it's thrown out the window. It isn't. It's still there. They just need you to still be there.
Yeah.
So that they realise that actually it's all connected, and all that effort that you put in, all that therapeutic parenting that you did is for them.
Brilliant. And that's a really good thing for people to bear in mind, I think, if they start going through this and experiencing some of the difficulties, similar to yours, that all that investment that you did earlier on, whilst it feels like it's gone, is actually hugely worthwhile and is what you return to. And I was going to ask finally, really, because you did allude to just a minute ago, the kind of support you've had. Where do you get your support from? Because it must be very difficult. It's a lonely enough position to be in. Because other parents, for example, don't get it either, do they? Parents of birth children may not just get it because their children don't experience these things.
No, I mean, sometimes it's nice to talk to my son. He hasn't any friends that are in the same position, but sometimes talking to those parents, you think, oh well, that bit, it's that sort of splitting up, which bit is because of the trauma and which bit is because it's the normal teenage response. And so at least you have a parallel of, oh, okay, they're all doing that. And then but yeah, I did. I'm sort of person who tends to want to research on my own or go and get books and then talk about it with somebody. So yeah. And obviously we've had some conversations about it. And it's, I think when you hear somebody else has been through it, you don't feel quite so on your own.
No.
We do have a couple of friends that have adopted, and when they adopted at the same time as us, and when we've checked in with them, it's different issues sometimes, but the same. It becomes a different relationship at this point, and we've kind of thought it's about holding firm, and you're not their friend, you're their parent, you're their rock. And that's the difficult bit to be.
Well, Mandy, I think you're doing an amazing job. Absolutely fantastic.
I'm lurching from day to day. I'm desperately.
I think we all feel like that at times.
It does. It feels literally like we just lurch. But if they come out the other end and they're happy and they have a settled, happy life, then we're all right.
Well, that lurching will will get you in the end. That's one way of travelling, if it is lurching or leaping or crawling, however you get there in the end. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for all of that. I hope that other people listening to this will perhaps feel the same and think, oh yeah, I'm going through that. I know I'm not the only one. Or for those that are about to, take a deep breath and just be ready for what might come. But, in the end, they'll get through it.
Hopefully we'll all come out the other end.
We will.
They're worth it. They're always worth it.
They are. I've got a friend whose adoptive children are actually now grown up. And so, having been through huge amounts of ups and downs, seeing them functioning and independent is amazing.
Yeah.
And at times they didn't feel that was going to happen. So it's great to see it does happen.
It is. I think our social worker had three birth children and 2 adopted children, and they were all grown up, and that did sort of make me think, right, okay, you have to, there is a way through, and as long as they can have a life at the end that's productive and they're happy and settled and they can form relationships, we're okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you ever so much, Mandy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Mandy and Jason, and thank you all for listening. Make sure you look out for our other podcasts covering topics such as behaviour management and exams.